Nobody believed the alien twins could sing, except the human janitor who stayed late to help. The last mop stroke left a glistening trail across the polished floor of Galactic Academy's main corridor. Jake Miller straightened his back, feeling the familiar ache between his shoulder blades. The clock on the wall read 22:37, another late night at the most prestigious alien educational institution in the Orion sector. "Just one more hallway and I'm out," he muttered, pushing his cleaning cart toward the auditorium wing. Jake wasn't supposed to be here this late. The other maintenance staff had cleared out hours ago, but he'd volunteered to stay. Extra credits meant extra food, and the silence of an empty school beat the hollow echo of his studio apartment. As he approached the auditorium, a sound stopped him mid-stride. A voice, no, voices, drifted through the slightly ajar door. The melody was unlike anything he'd ever heard, a harmony so perfect it made the hair on his arm stand up. One voice soared high while the other provided a haunting counterpoint, creating something that transcended mere singing. Jake set down his mop and moved closer. Peering through the crack in the door, he saw them, the Novali twins. Their azure skin seemed to glow under the dim stage lights, their long white hair cascading down their backs in identical waves. They wore the standard academy uniform, charcoal gray with silver piping, but somehow made the utilitarian garments look elegant. Alira and Selena, that was their names. Jake had seen them in passing, always together, always alone. The other students gave them a wide berth, occasionally hurling whispered insults or mocking laughter their way. The twins suddenly stopped singing, their heads turning in perfect synchronization toward the door. "Who's there?" one of them called out, her voice trembling slightly. Jake considered slipping away, but something made him push the door open instead. "Just the janitor," he said, raising his hands in a placating gesture. "I heard singing." The twins exchanged a glance, a silent communication passing between them. "We were just leaving," said the one on the left. Alira, Jake thought. "Wait," Jake said, stepping further into the room. "That was incredible. Why are you hiding in here after hours to practice?" The twins looked at each other again, uncertainty written across their identical faces. "The talent show," Selena finally said. "We signed up, but everyone says we'll fail," Alira finished, "that our voices are too alien, that humans and other species won't appreciate our harmonics." Jake frowned. "Who told you that garbage?" "Professor Drell said our vocal structures are incompatible with audience appreciation paradigms," Selena recited, as if reading from a textbook. Jake couldn't help it. He laughed. The twins stiffened, their blue skin darkening slightly in what he assumed was the Novali equivalent of a blush. "I'm not laughing at you," he quickly clarified. "I'm laughing at how wrong they are. Look, before I ended up here, I was a musician. On Earth." The twins' eyes widened simultaneously. "A professional musician?" Alira asked. Jake nodded, memories he usually kept locked away, bubbling to the surface. "Yeah, toured the Sol system for 7 years, had a #1 hit on Mars." He cleared his throat. "Anyway, what I'm saying is, I know talent when I hear it. And you two? You've got something special." "But Professor Drell," Selena began. "Doesn't know shit about music," Jake interrupted. "Pardon my language." For the first time, a smile flickered across both their faces. "The talent show is in 3 weeks," Alira said hesitantly. "We were going to withdraw our application tomorrow." Jake shook his head. "Don't. Look, I can help you. Coach you. 3 weeks is plenty of time to put together something that'll blow everyone away." "Why would you help us?" Selena asked, suspicion clouding her features. A good question. Jake wasn't sure of the answer himself. Maybe it was the music that had stirred something long dormant inside him. Maybe it was seeing these two kids being told they weren't good enough, when he knew damn well they were extraordinary. "Because talent deserves a chance," he said finally, "and because I've got nothing better to do after my shift." The twins conferred silently again, their expressions shifting in minute ways Jake couldn't interpret. "Okay," they said in unison, "we accept your help." Jake grinned. "Great. Same time tomorrow?" As he walked back to his cart, Jake felt something he hadn't experienced in years, a sense of purpose. The familiar weight of grief and regret still pressed down on his shoulders, but it seemed just a little lighter now. What he didn't know was that his impulsive offer to help two alien students would soon catapult him into a series of events that would change not just his life, but the course of interstellar relations forever. The following evening, Jake arrived at the auditorium 30 minutes early, carrying a small electronic keyboard under his arm. He'd spent his lunch break digging it out of storage, a relic from his former life he'd never quite been able to part with. As he set up on the stage, the auditorium doors swung open. The twins entered, their steps hesitant. "You actually came back," Alira said, surprise evident in her melodic voice. Jake smiled. "I said I would, didn't I?" "Many say things they don't mean," Selena replied softly. That simple statement revealed volumes about their experiences at the academy. Jake felt a surge of protectiveness toward these talented kids who'd been made to feel so unwelcome. "Well, I'm not many," he said, patting the stage beside him. "Come on up. Let's see what we're working with." The twins climbed the steps and stood awkwardly before him, hands clasped together. "First, I want to hear your full range," Jake said, striking a note on the keyboard. "Just follow along as I play." He began a simple scale, and the twins followed perfectly, their voices blending in flawless harmony. Jake's fingers faltered on the keys as they effortlessly climbed to notes he hadn't even planned to attempt. Notes that should have been physically impossible for humanoid vocal structures. "Holy shit," he whispered when they finished. You just hit frequencies that shouldn't be possible." The twins exchanged a glance. "Is that bad?" Alira asked. "Bad? It's incredible. You could revolutionize vocal performance across the galaxy." Jake shook his head in amazement. "Why would anyone tell you that you couldn't sing?" Selena's gaze dropped to the floor. Professor Drell wasn't the only one. When we signed up for the talent show, Vren Talix and his friends laughed. They said they'd arranged for us to go last so everyone could end the night with a good joke. Jake's jaw tightened. "Vren Talix? The Centaurian kid?" Alira nodded. "His father is on the Academy's board. Vren told everyone he put our names on the list as a prank, and now the whole school is expecting us to fail." "That's why we practice here after hours," Selena added. "We thought if we worked hard enough, maybe we could surprise them." Jake felt his blood boil. Rich alien brats setting up these girls for public humiliation. It was despicable. "Well," he said, keeping his voice steady, "we're definitely going to surprise them. But first, let's work on your stage presence. Stand up straight, shoulders back." The twins complied, but their posture remained stiff, uncomfortable. "Now sing the first verse of whatever you were planning for the show." They began to sing, their voices technically perfect, but their eyes fixed on the floor, bodies rigid with tension. Stop," Jake said gently. "You sound amazing, but you look terrified. What's going on?" "We've never performed in front of anyone before," Alira admitted. "Not even your mother?" Jake asked. "Especially not our mother," Selena said quickly, then glanced at her sister as if she'd revealed too much. Jake raised an eyebrow but didn't press. "Well, you're performing for me now, and I'm still breathing. Look, everyone gets stage fright. I used to throw up before every show." "Really?" The twins looked skeptical. "Scout's honor. First time I performed at Lunadome, I was so nervous I forgot the first 3 lines of my own song." Jake smiled at the memory. "But I learned some tricks. Close your eyes." The twins obeyed. "Now imagine the audience in their underwear." 2 pairs of eyes snapped open. "What?" They gasped in unison. Jake laughed. "Okay, maybe that's too human. How about this? Imagine you're singing just for yourselves, like you were when I found you." They tried again, this time with marginally more confidence. "Better," Jake encouraged, "but there's still something holding you back." "What are you afraid of?" The twins exchanged another of their silent communications. "Failure," Alira finally said. "Humiliation," Selena added. "Being proven right that we don't belong," they finished together. Jake's heart ached for them. He recognized that fear, had lived with it himself. "Listen to me," he said firmly. "Those feelings, they're universal. Every artist feels them. The difference is whether you let them stop you or fuel you." As they continued practicing, Jake noticed the twins gradually relaxing, their natural talent beginning to shine through their nervousness. By the end of the session, they were actually smiling. "Same time tomorrow?" he asked as they packed up. "Yes, but..." Alira hesitated. Our mother wants to meet you first." Jake blinked in surprise. "Your mother?" "We told her about you," Selena explained. "She was concerned about a human man spending time with us after hours." "Understandable," Jake nodded. "I'd be happy to meet her." "Tomorrow then," the twins said together, their synchronized speech still slightly unnerving. As they turned to leave, Jake called after them, "Hey! For what it's worth, I think Vrentalex and his cronies are in for the shock of their lives." The twins' smiles widened, and for a moment, Jake caught a glimpse of the confidence they could possess. Would possess if he had anything to say about it. After they left, Jake remained on stage, fingers absently tracing the keys of his keyboard. For the first time in 3 years, music felt like a friend again, rather than a painful reminder of everything he'd lost. And somehow, helping these alien kids face their fears was forcing him to confront his own. Tomorrow would bring a new challenge, convincing an understandably suspicious alien mother that his intentions were honorable. But for tonight, Jake was content with the small victory of 2 shy smiles and the rekindling of a passion he'd thought long extinguished. Jake arrived at the auditorium the next evening with an unusual flutter of nerves in his stomach. He'd taken extra care with his appearance, swapping his standard gray maintenance uniform for clean civilian clothes, a simple blue shirt that matched his eyes and dark pants. He'd even trimmed his beard, a task he usually approached with indifference. The doors swung open precisely at 1900 hours, revealing not just the twins, but a third figure between them. Jake's breath caught in his throat. She was taller than her daughters, with the same azure skin, but a deeper, more vibrant shade that seemed to shimmer under the auditorium lights. Her snow-white hair was elaborately braided and adorned with small silver ornaments that tinkled softly when she moved. But it was her eyes that held him captive. Large, luminous, and an electric blue that seemed to pierce straight through him. "You must be Jake Miller," she said, her voice carrying the same melodic quality as her daughter's, but deeper, more resonant. "I am Vyra Inveri." Jake stepped forward, extending his hand in the human custom before remembering himself. "Sorry, I'm not sure how Novali greet each other." A hint of amusement flickered across Vyra's face. She raised her right hand, palm forward, fingers splayed. "Like this. It's a gesture of openness, showing we carry no weapons or ill intent." Jake mirrored the gesture, feeling slightly foolish but determined to show respect. "It's a pleasure to meet you, Miss Invari." "Ambassador Inveri," Alira corrected quietly. Jake blinked in surprise. "Ambassador?" Vera waved a dismissive hand. "Former ambassador. I now serve as a cultural liaison for the Novali Consortium here on Orion Station." Her gaze sharpened. "My daughters tell me you've offered to help them prepare for this talent exhibition." "Yes, ma'am." They have extraordinary voices. "And what qualifies a human maintenance worker to make such an assessment?" There was no malice in her question, only direct curiosity, but Jake felt himself bristle slightly at the implied dismissal. "I was a professional musician for 7 years before coming to Orion. Platinum records on 3 planets, headlined the Mars Dome twice." He met her gaze steadily. "I know talent when I hear it." Something shifted in Vyra's expression. Surprise, perhaps, or reassessment. The girls also mentioned that their participation was arranged as some form of humiliation ritual. Jake nodded grimly. "A student named Vrentalex put their names on the list as a prank. He's expecting them to fail spectacularly." "I see." Vera's voice cooled several degrees. "And you believe you can prevent this outcome?" "I don't just believe it, I guarantee it. Your daughters have a gift that could change how the entire station perceives Novali culture. They just need confidence and proper coaching." Vyra studied him for a long moment, her expression unreadable. Then she turned to her daughters. "Leave us. Practice your scales in the corridor. I wish to speak with Mr. Miller alone." The twins exchanged a worried glance but obeyed without question, slipping out through the auditorium doors. As soon as they were alone, Vyra's demeanor changed subtly. She moved closer, and Jake caught a hint of an exotic scent, something like cinnamon and ozone. "Why are you really doing this, Mr. Miller?" she asked, her voice softer now. "Humans rarely involve themselves in alien affairs without personal gain." "That's not fair," Jake countered. "Plenty of humans care about others regardless of species." "Perhaps. But my experience suggests otherwise. She circled him slowly, appraisingly. My daughters are precious to me. They've endured much since we arrived on this station. Because they're different, Jake said quietly. Vira stopped, looking at him with sudden intensity. Yes, because they're different. Because their father abandoned us when they were infants, claiming their dual voice was an abomination. Because Novali society shunned them, and now this academy continues the tradition? Jake felt a surge of empathy. I understand what it's like to lose everything and have to start over somewhere new. Do you? Vira's gaze was penetrating, as if she could read the grief etched into his soul. 3 years ago, I lost my wife and daughter in a shuttle accident. I was supposed to be with them, but I stayed behind for one last concert. Jake swallowed hard. After that, I couldn't bear to make music anymore. I left Earth, took the first transport heading to the outer colonies, and ended up here. Vira's expression softened. And yet you offer to teach my daughters. Their voices woke something in me, something I thought was dead. Jake shrugged, uncomfortable with his own vulnerability. Maybe helping them will help me too. A moment of silence stretched between them, charged with unexpected understanding. Vira moved closer, her eyes never leaving his. Novali can sense emotional resonance, she said quietly. It's how we choose our mates, our friends. Your resonance is unusual for a human, deep, authentic. Jake wasn't sure how to respond to that, especially with her standing so close he could feel the unusual heat radiating from her skin. Novali ran several degrees warmer than humans, he recalled from xenobiology basics. So, do I pass inspection? He asked, attempting to lighten the suddenly intimate atmosphere. Vira's lips curved in a smile that transformed her face from merely beautiful to breathtaking. Conditionally, I will attend these sessions. All of them. Is that a problem, Mr. S. Miller? Not at all, Ambassador. Jake found himself returning her smile. In fact, having an adult Novali present might help me understand their vocal structures better. Then we have an arrangement. She extended her hand, palm forward, but instead of maintaining the formal distance of the greeting, she moved closer until her palm nearly touched his. My daughters trust you, Jake Miller. Don't make me regret allowing that trust. The heat from her palm radiated against his, creating a strange tingling sensation that traveled up his arm. Their eyes locked, and Jake had the distinct impression that something significant had just transpired, though he couldn't have said exactly what. The moment was broken by the auditorium doors swinging open as the twins returned, looking anxiously between the two adults. We will continue, Vira announced, stepping back from Jake. Mr. Miller will instruct you, and I will observe. The relief on the girls' faces was palpable. As they took their places on stage, Jake caught Vira watching him with an expression that combined caution with something else, something that made his pulse quicken in a way it hadn't in 3 long years. Over the next week, a routine developed. Each evening after Jake's shift ended, he would meet the twins and Vira in the auditorium for 2 hours of intensive vocal training. The girls improved rapidly under his guidance, their confidence growing alongside their technical skills. Vira watched from the front row, her initial skepticism gradually giving way to grudging respect, then genuine appreciation. Jake found himself increasingly aware of her presence, the way she leaned forward during particularly challenging exercises, the rare but rewarding sound of her laughter when he made a joke, the lingering glances they exchanged when the twins were focused on their practice. On the 8th evening, Jake arrived to find only Vira waiting in the dimly lit auditorium. The girls won't be joining us tonight, she said, rising from her seat as he approached. They have an important xenobiology examination tomorrow. You could have sent a message, Jake said, setting down his keyboard case. Save me the trip. I could have, Vira agreed, moving closer, but I wanted to speak with you privately. Something in her tone made Jake's pulse quicken. About the girls' progress? Partly, she gestured to the stage. Show me what you've been teaching them. Jake hesitated, then moved to the keyboard. As he played the opening notes of the piece he'd arranged for the twins, Vira sat beside him on the bench, her thigh pressing against his. The warmth of her body was distracting, her exotic scent enveloping him. Your arrangement honors the traditional Novali harmonics while making them accessible to non-Novali ears, she observed. It's impressive. Thanks. Jake's fingers faltered on the keys as Vira leaned closer, ostensibly to examine the sheet music. "You've awakened something in my daughters that I feared was lost forever," she said softly. "Their father's rejection damaged them deeply. They believed their dual voice was a curse, not a gift." "It's extraordinary," Jake said. "On Earth, they'd be celebrated, not ostracized." Vira's eyes met his, filled with curiosity. Humans are remarkably adaptable to alien differences. Most species retreat from what they don't understand, but you embrace it. "Not all humans are so open-minded," Jake admitted, "but yeah, curiosity is kind of our thing. It's gotten us into trouble and out of it more times than I can count." "A fascinating species," Vira murmured, studying his face with undisguised interest. "So fragile physically, yet so resilient in spirit." Jake laughed. "I wouldn't call myself fragile. By Novali standards, you are. Our bone density is 3 times yours. Our skin can withstand temperatures that would burn human flesh." Her hand moved to his forearm, fingers tracing the veins visible beneath his skin. "Yet you venture into space, facing environments that could kill you in seconds without protection. It's admirable." The touch of her fingers sent electricity up his arm. Jake swallowed hard, suddenly very aware of how close they were sitting. "There's something you should know," Vira said, her voice dropping to a near whisper. "Something happened today." The shift in her tone snapped Jake back to reality. "What is it?" "The girls found this in their practice room." She reached into a pocket and produced a small device, no larger than a coin. "It's an audio disruptor. When activated, it would have created feedback through the room's sound system. Painful for humans, but potentially damaging to Novali eardrums." Jake took the device, anger flaring. "Vrentalics? Almost certainly, though there's no proof. The Academy security system conveniently malfunctioned during the time it must have been planted." "That little bastard," Jake muttered. "This could have seriously hurt them." "Yes, and it suggests he's growing desperate as the talent show approaches." Vira's expression hardened. "The girls wanted to withdraw from the competition. They're frightened. And you?" "I told them that courage isn't the absence of fear, but the determination to continue despite it." A small smile played at her lips. "A human saying I've always admired." Jake nodded, impressed. "And they agreed to continue?" "They did, but only after I promised that you would help ensure their safety." Her hand returned to his arm, this time gripping it firmly. "Will you, Jake Miller? Will you stand with my family against those who wish to harm us?" The question seemed to carry weight beyond the immediate situation. Jake covered her hand with his own, struck by how right it felt despite the alien texture of her skin. Smoother than human skin, with a subtle pattern of raised ridges that reminded him of fingerprints. "Yes," he said simply, "I will." Something shifted in Vira's eyes. Relief, gratitude, and something warmer. She leaned forward, closing the distance between them. For a moment, Jake thought she might kiss him, but instead she pressed her forehead against his, an intimate gesture that sent a wave of heat through his body. "In my culture," she whispered, "this is how we acknowledge a soul bond, a connection that transcends ordinary understanding." Jake remained perfectly still, afraid to break whatever spell had fallen over them. "And what does that mean exactly?" Vira pulled back slightly, her eyes meeting his. "It means I see you, Jake Miller. Not the janitor, not the former musician, but the man beneath those roles. The man who helps my daughters without seeking reward. The man who carries grief like a second skin, yet still offers kindness to others." Her words stripped him bare, seeing through the carefully constructed walls he'd built around his heart. No one had looked at him that way since Sarah, his wife. The realization should have triggered pain, but instead he felt something unexpected. Hope. "I see you too," he said hoarsely. "The ambassador who gave up her position to protect her daughters. The mother who crossed galaxies to give them a chance at a better life." Vira's lips curved in a smile that transformed her face. Without warning, she closed the remaining distance between them, pressing her mouth to his. The kiss was tentative at first, then deepened as Jake responded, his hand moving to the back of her neck, fingers threading through her silken hair. When they finally broke apart, both slightly breathless, Vira's blue skin had darkened to a deeper shade, the Novali equivalent of a blush, Jake realized. That, she said with a hint of mischief, is a human custom I've always wanted to explore more thoroughly. The following morning, Jake abandoned his usual maintenance rounds and headed straight for the administrative wing. His encounter with Vira the previous night had left him feeling more alive than he had in years, but it had also hardened his resolve to confront the threat against the twins. He found Vren Talix lounging in the student commons with his usual entourage of sycophants, a mix of wealthy alien students whose parents held influential positions throughout the sector. The Centaurian youth was instantly recognizable by his copper-toned skin and the distinctive ridge of cartilage that ran from his forehead to the nape of his neck, a feature his species considered a mark of pure bloodlines. "Vren Talix," Jake called out, his voice carrying across the commons. "I need a word." The student lounge fell silent as heads turned toward the confrontation. Vren looked up with lazy disdain, his four-fingered hand pausing mid-gesture. "Maintenance staff use the service corridors," he drawled, prompting snickers from his friends. "Or did you get lost on your way to clean the waste processors?" Jake approached the table, maintaining a calm exterior despite the anger simmering beneath. "Cut the crap, Vren. I know about the audio disruptor you planted in the practice room." Vren's expression didn't change, but Jake noticed the slight stiffening of his posture. "I have no idea what you're talking about, human." "Really? Because tampering with Academy equipment is grounds for expulsion. So is endangering other students." A female Arcturian at Vren's side leaned forward, her bioluminescent facial markings pulsing with agitation. "You're accusing a board member's son based on what evidence? The word of those freakish twins?" Jake turned his gaze to her. "And you are?" "Mela Dorn, daughter of Sector Commander Dorn," she replied haughtily. "And you're just a janitor overstepping his bounds." "Former platinum-selling musician, actually," Jake corrected with a tight smile. "And currently the vocal coach preparing Alira and Selena Invari for their performance at the talent show, a performance you seem desperate to sabotage." Vren rose to his feet, standing eye to eye with Jake. Despite being younger, the Centaurian matched him in height and outweighed him by at least 20 kilos of dense alien muscle. "Listen carefully, human," Vren said, his voice low and menacing. "The Invari family doesn't belong here. Their presence at this academy is a political accommodation that my father reluctantly agreed to, despite the consortium's repeated violations of trade agreements in Centaurian space." So there it was, confirmation that the bullying was part of a larger political conflict. Jake had suspected as much, but hearing it stated so baldly still surprised him. "That doesn't justify endangering students," Jake countered. "Those twins aren't just students," Vren hissed. "They're bargaining chips. Their mother knows exactly what she's doing, using them to gain sympathy while the consortium undercuts Centaurian mining operations in 3 systems." Jake felt a flare of doubt. Could Vira be using her daughters as political pawns? The thought was quickly dismissed. He'd seen her fierce protectiveness, felt the genuine connection between mother and daughters. "Whatever conflict exists between your father and the Navali Consortium, Alira and Selena are innocent," Jake said firmly. "They're kids trying to survive in a hostile environment. And if I find one more sabotage device, or if anything happens to them before the talent show, I'll take what I know directly to Headmaster Prell." Vren's laugh was cold. "Prell answers to the board, and the board answers to my father. Your threats are meaningless." "Maybe," Jake conceded, "but I wonder how the Interstellar Education Commission would react to evidence of sanctioned bullying and endangerment at their flagship academy. I hear they take their reputation for inclusivity very seriously." The flash of uncertainty in Vren's eyes told Jake his shot in the dark had hit its mark. The IEC certification was crucial to the academy's prestige and funding. "You're making a powerful enemy, Miller," Vren warned. "Wouldn't be the first time." Jake turned to leave, then paused. "By the way, you might want to upgrade your tech skills. The disruptor you planted had your family manufacturing signature all over it." It was a bluff. Jake knew nothing about tech signatures, but the way Vren's copper skin paled to a sickly orange suggested it had landed. As Jake walked away, he felt the stares of students tracking his exit. He'd just publicly challenged one of the most powerful families on the station. The maintenance supervisor would probably have his job by afternoon. Strangely, the thought didn't bother him as much as it should have. He was halfway back to his assigned sector when his comm unit buzzed with an incoming message from Vera. My quarters, 20 o'clock. We need to talk. The message sent a flutter of anticipation through him, quickly followed by concern. Had she already heard about his confrontation with Vren? News traveled fast on space stations. The rest of his shift passed in a blur of routine tasks and mounting tension. By the time he stood outside Vira's residential unit in the diplomatic quarter, Jake's nerves were wound tight. She opened the door before he could signal his arrival. Novelly's hearing was exceptionally acute. The sight of her momentarily drove all other thoughts from his mind. She'd exchanged her formal diplomatic attire for a simple flowing garment in deep purple that complemented her azure skin. "You confronted Vren Talix," she said without preamble, pulling him inside and closing the door. "News travels fast. On a station this size? At light speed." Vira's expression was unreadable. That was either very brave or very foolish. "I've been called worse combinations." Jake glanced around the apartment, tastefully decorated with a mix of Novali artifacts and station-standard furnishings. "Where are the girls?" "Study group. They won't be back for hours." Vira moved closer, her eyes searching his face. "You put your position at risk today. Some things matter more than a job." "Like what?" "Like standing up for what's right. Like protecting people who deserve protection." Jake met her gaze steadily. "Like keeping my promises." Something in Vira's expression softened. She reached up, tracing the contour of his jaw with warm fingertips. "Humans are such fascinating creatures, so physically vulnerable, yet you charge headlong into conflict without hesitation." "It's kind of our specialty," Jake admitted, his pulse quickening at her touch. "Vren told you about the trade dispute?" Jake nodded. "He claims you're using the twins as political pawns." Vira's hand dropped, her expression darkening. "The opposite. I accepted a lesser diplomatic position here to remove them from the political spotlight on our homeworld, to give them a chance at normalcy." "I believe you," Jake said simply. Those 3 words seemed to break something open between them. Vira moved forward suddenly, pressing her body against his, her mouth finding his with unexpected hunger. Jake responded instantly, his arms encircling her waist, pulling her closer. "Stay with me tonight," she whispered against his lips. "The girls won't return until morning." Jake drew back slightly, searching her luminous blue eyes. "Are you sure? I mean, human and Novali, is that even?" Vira's laugh was low and musical. "Perfectly compatible, I assure you. Though there are differences you might find interesting." The promise in her voice sent heat coursing through him. "I'm a fast learner." "I'm counting on that," she murmured, taking his hand and leading him toward her bedroom. What followed was a night of discovery, of alien anatomy that was just familiar enough to navigate but different enough to fascinate, of cultural taboos that made no sense across species but were respected nonetheless, of connection that transcended the physical to touch something deeper. In the quiet aftermath, as they lay tangled in sheets, Jake realized that for the first time in 3 years, he had gone hours without thinking of his grief. Instead, his mind was filled with blue skin and white hair, with the sound of Vira's laughter and the feel of her heartbeat against his chest. Faster than a human's, with a different rhythm, but no less vital. "What happens now?" he asked into the darkness. Vira's hand found his. "Now we protect my daughters, and then we see what comes next." The week before the talent show unfolded like a strategic battle. Jake's confrontation with Vren had immediate consequences. He was summoned to the maintenance supervisor's office the very next day and informed that his services were under review. He wasn't officially fired, but the message was clear. Back off or lose your job. Simultaneously, the Academy administration announced new safety protocols for the talent show. All performances would now require pre-approval from a specially appointed committee, a committee that, unsurprisingly, included Vren's father, board trustee Morden Talix. "They're trying to block us through bureaucracy," Vira fumed as she paced her living room that evening. The twins were in their bedroom, practicing with renewed determination, despite the obstacles. Jake watched her from the couch, admiring the fierce grace of her movements. The past few days had transformed their relationship in ways he never could have anticipated. What began as physical attraction had deepened into something neither of them had names for yet, something that transcended species and carried its own gravity. We'll find a way around it, he assured her. I've dealt with bureaucrats before. They're the same on every planet. All rules and no imagination. Vera paused her pacing, a smile softening her features. Your optimism is one of your most endearing human traits. Just one of many, I hope, Jake replied with a suggestive grin that made her azure skin darken with pleasure. Their newfound intimacy had not gone unnoticed. That morning, Jake had endured knowing looks from his maintenance colleagues, along with crude comments about going blue. The xenophobia inherent in such remarks reminded him that even on a space station dedicated to interspecies education, prejudice lingered just beneath the surface. Vera had faced her own challenges. As a diplomatic liaison, her personal relationships were subject to scrutiny, and an interspecies romance with a human maintenance worker had raised eyebrows among her Novali colleagues. I received a formal inquiry from the consortium today, she said, sitting beside him on the couch. They're concerned about my association with you. Jake tensed. Will this cause problems for your position? Nothing I can't handle. She took his hand, tracing the lines of his palm with a fingertip, a Novali gesture of affection he'd come to cherish. But it's not just the relationship they're questioning. Someone has been spreading rumors that I orchestrated the twins' participation in the talent show as a political maneuver. Vren's work, Jake muttered. Almost certainly, but he's just the instrument. His father is the composer. Vira's expression hardened. Morden Talix has opposed Novali expansion into this sector for years. He sees our presence at the Academy as the first step toward cultural infiltration. It's a school, not a military outpost, Jake said, exasperated. Politics rarely concerns itself with such distinctions. Vera sighed. The twins' performance has somehow become symbolic of a larger conflict. If they succeed, it validates our presence here. If they fail or withdraw, it reinforces the narrative that Novali don't belong. The weight of this realization settled between them. What had begun as Jake helping two talented kids had escalated into a proxy battle in an interstellar political dispute. A chime from Vera's communication panel interrupted their conversation. She crossed to answer it, her expression shifting to concern as she listened to the message. What is it? Jake asked when she disconnected. Academy security. There was an incident in the twins' xenobiology lab today, a chemical mixture that produced noxious fumes. Several students were affected, including Alira and Selena. Jake was on his feet instantly. Are they okay? Minor respiratory irritation. They're in the medical bay now. Vira was already moving toward the door. The official report calls it an accident, but we know better, Jake finished grimly. The medical bay was a sterile environment of soft lighting and quiet efficiency. They found the twins sitting side by side on an examination bed, their blue skin paler than usual, but otherwise appearing unharmed. Mom! Jake! Alira called out when she saw them. They said it was just an accident, but Vren was watching from the corridor, Selena finished. He smiled when the mixture started smoking. Jake felt a surge of protective anger. This has gone too far. I agree, said a new voice from behind them. They turned to find Headmaster Prell in the doorway, a tall, willowy Andorian with the characteristic silver skin and four-fingered hands of his species. Ambassador Invari, Mr. Miller. A word in private, please. They followed Prell to a small consultation room adjacent to the medical bay. The headmaster closed the door and activated a privacy field before speaking. I've been monitoring the situation with your daughters for some time, he said without preamble. Today's accident crossed a line I cannot ignore, regardless of the political pressures on this institution. Jake exchanged a surprised glance with Vera. This was unexpected. You believe it wasn't an accident? Vira asked cautiously. I know it wasn't. Prell's silver features hardened. Security footage shows Vren Talix tampering with the chemical storage cabinet before class. Unfortunately, the evidence is problematic. Let me guess, Jake said. His father's influence. Prell inclined his head. The Academy Board has certain expectations regarding the handling of disciplinary matters involving trustees' families. So he gets away with it, Jake said bitterly. Again, not necessarily. Prell's four-fingered hand activated a holographic display. The Talent Show Committee has, as you know, implemented new approval requirements. The twins' application has been flagged for further review. a bureaucratic tactic to prevent their participation. "We're aware," Vira said tersely. "What you may not be aware of is that as headmaster, I retain final authority over all academy events." Prell's mouth curved in what might have been a smile. "The committee can advise, but they cannot overrule my decisions regarding student activities." Hope flickered in Jake's chest. "You're saying—" "I'm saying that I've personally reviewed and approved the twins' performance application." Prell deactivated the hologram. "They will perform as scheduled, last in the program, as originally planned." Vira's eyes narrowed with suspicion. "Why would you help us?" "The political implications are precisely why I must act," Prell interrupted. "This academy was founded on principles of interspecies cooperation and understanding. I will not allow it to become a battleground for trade disputes and political maneuvering, especially not at the expense of students under my care." The headmaster's principled stand surprised Jake. In his experience, administrators rarely risked their positions for the sake of what was right. "Thank you," he said simply. "Don't thank me yet," Prell warned. "Trustee Talix will not take this lightly. The talent show is 3 days away. I suggest you prepare the twins not just for their performance, but for the opposition they may face." After Prell left, Jake and Vira collected the twins from the medical bay and returned to Vira's quarters. As the girls rested in their room, Jake and Vira strategized in hushed tones in the living area. "We need to record everything," Jake insisted. "Any further sabotage attempts, any threats. If we can gather enough evidence—" "Evidence means nothing without the will to act on it," Vira countered. "We need allies, people willing to stand with us publicly." Jake thought for a moment, then smiled slowly. "I might know just where to find some." That night, as they lay entwined in Vira's bed, the warmth of her alien body a now familiar comfort against his, Jake realized how completely his life had transformed in just a few weeks. From solitary grief to this, a woman who challenged and fascinated him, 2 talented kids who'd rekindled his passion for music, and a cause worth fighting for. "What are you thinking?" Vira murmured against his chest, her white hair spilling across his skin like moonlight. "That humans have a saying, the best revenge is living well." Jake pressed a kiss to her forehead. "We're going to help those girls shine so brightly that no one will ever doubt them again." The night of the talent show arrived with an electric atmosphere of anticipation. The Academy's grand auditorium, far larger than the practice space where Jake had first discovered the twins, was filled to capacity. Students, faculty, and parents crowded the tiered seating, their conversations creating a steady hum of excitement. Backstage, Jake made final adjustments to the twins' sound setup, meticulously checking every connection. He'd spent the previous day installing redundant systems and security measures. If anyone tried to sabotage the audio during the performance, they'd find it virtually impossible. "Nervous?" he asked, glancing up at Alira and Selena. The twins stood side by side in matching gowns of shimmering silver that complemented their blue skin and white hair. The outfits had been Vira's idea, traditional Navali performance attire reimagined with a contemporary flair. "Terrified," Alira admitted. "But ready," Selena finished, her chin lifted with newfound confidence. Jake straightened, giving each girl's shoulder a reassuring squeeze. "Remember what we practiced. Focus on each other, not the audience. The music will do the rest." Vira appeared from the wings, resplendent in formal diplomatic attire, a deep blue ensemble that marked her as a consortium representative. Her eyes found Jake's immediately, a private smile passing between them that carried the warmth of their shared nights and the promise of more to come. "You should take your seat," she told him. "The show is about to begin." Jake nodded but hesitated. "No sign of Ren or his father?" "Trustee Talix is in the front row with the other board members," Vera replied. "Vren is with his usual group near the back. They've been suspiciously quiet." "Too quiet," Jake muttered. "I don't trust it." "Nor do I, but we've taken every precaution." Vira touched his arm, her fingers lingering. "Go. I'll stay with the girls until their performance." As Jake made his way to his seat in the audience, he scanned the crowd, noting with satisfaction several unexpected faces. His plan had worked better than anticipated. The talent show progressed through a series of performances ranging from impressive to awkward. A Vulnarian student demonstrating remarkable telekinetic control over musical instruments, an Arcturian quartet whose bioluminescent displays synchronized with their electronic composition, and a human exchange student whose classical violin piece earned enthusiastic applause. Throughout it all, Jake remained vigilant, watching for any sign of interference from Vren or his cronies. The Centaurian youth sat with his friends, occasionally whispering and laughing, but making no obvious moves. Finally, Headmaster Prell stepped onto the stage for the final introduction. Our last performance tonight features two students showcasing a traditional Novali harmonic composition. Please welcome Alira and Selena Nvari. The polite applause was punctuated by a few snickers from Vren's section. Jake tensed, his hand hovering near the emergency override control he'd concealed in his pocket. A last resort if something went wrong with the sound system. The twins walked onto the stage with practiced grace, taking their positions at center stage. A moment of silence fell as they stood motionless, eyes closed, gathering themselves. Then they began to sing. The first notes were soft, almost tentative, a deliberate choice Jake had suggested to draw the audience in. But as the harmony built, their confidence grew, their voices blending in that extraordinary way that had first captivated him weeks ago. The melody soared, reaching frequencies that human vocal cords could never achieve, creating harmonics that seemed to vibrate the very air of the auditorium. Jake watched the audience's reactions transform from polite attention to stunned amazement. Even Trusty Talek sat forward in his seat, his expression shifting from disdain to reluctant wonder. Halfway through the performance, Jake noticed movement at the back of the auditorium. Vren had slipped out of his seat and was moving toward a control panel near the rear wall. Jake immediately rose to intercept him, but before he could take 3 steps, a security officer, one Jake recognized from his maintenance rounds, smoothly blocked Vren's path. Jake smiled grimly. His request to Headmaster Prell for additional security had been heeded. On stage, the twins reached the crescendo of their piece, their voices creating a sound so pure and powerful that several audience members visibly shivered. The final notes hung in the air, like crystalline structures before gently dissolving into silence. For one heartbeat, no one moved or spoke. Then the auditorium erupted in thunderous applause. Students of every species rose to their feet, cheering and calling for an encore. Near the front, Jake spotted several dignified individuals in formal attire, applauding with particular enthusiasm. The representatives from the Interstellar Education Commission he'd contacted through old music industry connections. The twins stood hand in hand, their expressions a mixture of shock and joy as they absorbed the response. Vera appeared at the edge of the stage, her eyes shining with tears of pride. As the applause continued, Jake made his way backstage, arriving just as the twins exited to continue cheering. "You did it," he said simply, opening his arms as both girls rushed to embrace him. "We did it," Alira corrected, her voice trembling with emotion. "Together," Selena added. Vera joined them, completing their circle. "The commission representatives are requesting to meet you," she told her daughters. "They're particularly interested in discussing cultural exchange programs featuring Novali music." Before the twins could respond, a commotion at the backstage entrance drew their attention. Vren Talek stood there, his copper face flushed with anger, flanked by security officers. "This isn't over," he spat. Your father will be dealing with his own problems," interrupted a new voice. Headmaster Prell stepped forward, accompanied by a stern-looking official in Interstellar Commission uniform. "The Commission has opened an investigation into allegations of influence peddling and discriminatory practices at the Academy. Trustee Talek has been temporarily removed from the board pending the outcome." Vren's face paled to a sickly orange. "You can't do that. My father is no longer in a position to protect you," Prell finished coldly. "Now, I suggest you leave before we discuss your role in the recent accidents involving your fellow students." As security escorted the sputtering Centaurian away, Jake couldn't suppress a satisfied smile. Justice, it seemed, occasionally prevailed even in the complex politics of interstellar education. The aftermath of the talent show unfolded like a dream. The twins became overnight celebrities at the Academy, their performance recording going viral across the station's networks. Offers for cultural appearances flooded in, and the bullying that had once defined their school experience vanished overnight. 2 weeks later, Jake found himself in Vera's quarters, watching as she packed for a short diplomatic mission. "The consortium is sending me to Earth," she explained, carefully folding a formal robe. "They want to explore cultural exchange opportunities, specifically music programs featuring Novali performers. Earth, Jake repeated, the word feeling strange on his tongue after 3 years away. Vera paused, studying his expression. The girls and I would like you to come with us. As our cultural advisor. Cultural advisor, Jake laughed. Is that what they're calling it these days? Vera moved to him, her warm hands framing his face. I'm calling it what it is. I want the man I love to return to his homeworld with his new family. The word love hung between them, spoken for the first time, though they had expressed it in countless other ways over the past weeks. Your new family, Jake repeated softly. I like the sound of that. The girls do too, Vera murmured, pressing closer. They've already started calling you Dad when you're not around. The revelation sent a wave of emotion through Jake so powerful, it nearly brought him to his knees. For 3 years, he'd believed that part of his life, the part where he was a husband, a father, a musician, was over forever. Now, against all odds, he'd found a new path forward with this extraordinary alien woman and her talented daughters. Earth it is, he agreed, pulling her into his arms. But first, Ambassador, I believe we have some cultural exchange of our own to attend to. Vera's laughter was musical as she led him toward the bedroom. I do so admire humanity's diplomatic skills. Later, as they lay together in the peaceful aftermath of their passion, Jake reflected on the strange, winding path that had brought him here. A chance encounter in an empty auditorium, a moment of recognition between species, a human janitor who heard what no one else could or would hear. Sometimes, he thought, the universe offered second chances in the most unexpected packages. You just had to be willing to listen for them.